Hello everyone, this is update for July 9, 2024, day 867 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for July 8 and 7. So as always, I'm going to start with the general strategic updates and then I'm going to switch to the situation on battlefield. As you can see, I'm going to start with the situation in Africa, and there's new development there. For those who pay attention, effectively, Russia got control of three countries: Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And so, for ease of administration, Russia is effectively combining them into one country. Uh, not sort of legally, but sort of administratively, and it really reminds time of colonialism, where it's also was everything was driven by administrative efficiencies to the detriment of local population. So, as you can see, the same approaches being used by Russia. Whatever, I don't know, less than 100 years ago, relative to where sort of this colonial situation was. Uh, um, Switching a little bit to other developments in Japan, uh, Japanese Japanese army also facing shortages of recruits, similar to what's going on in the West. Meaning, also technically, Japan is part of the West. Just geographically, it's not the West. But what I mean is, Japan is facing exactly the same problem that Europe is facing, that US, that all major developed world countries are facing, and especially probably it's extremely hard to get new recruits, given that there is non-zero threat of the real hot war with China and its allies in the Pacific. So nobody wants to go there on their own. At the same time, Japan is actively building its uh, ties with Philippines. There was a new agreement signed between the two countries where Japanese troops can be stationed in Philippines, and it's all part of organizing new alliance in the Pacific to contain China. And so far, it looks like it's going to be Philippines, Japan, South Korea, obviously Australia, New Zealand, US, UK. Those are sort of main countries, and then opposing obviously North Korea, Russia, and China. I think the rest of the countries are probably going to be neutral, and will try to stay out of that conflict. But that's sort of where it's going in Asia Pacific. Let me switch then to the situation um, in Russia. And so, as you can see, this is India's prime minister visit to Russia. He's meeting with Russian president, and it's extremely warm meeting, as you can see, on a personal level. That's always extremely important, and even more important that this meeting first happened at Russian president home. He obviously have many homes, so there is no question about it, but it's his sort of home in Moscow, let's put this way. And so that's extremely unusual for Russian president to invite to his home, to have this, just kind of basically show his personal residence. And the the key here is not even so much about specific tangible achievements, which is it doesn't look there is many of those. That it's more that sort of India is um, is not supporting West. Let's put this way. That India can be a window into the world for Russia, which it was very clearly, because India was processing Russian crude oil and then reselling it to the West as refined products. So things don't change. The two key parts where there is actually tangible business interest is Russia is actively seeking to replace lost supply of medication from the West with supply from India, basically generics from India, because Russia was largely cut off from the Western medical supplies. So now they should be able to replace it with some kind of equivalent. May not be perfect, but when you don't have anything, something is better than nothing. And that's sort of one place where both sides have mutual interest. The same way as if I mentioned before, Russia has 20, 30, 40 billion stock in India that they cannot get out because there is simply nothing to buy there of interest for Russia. So apparently, pharmaceuticals will be one such item that Russia will be buying. And the second part of this meeting was about the military discussion, military cooperation. And in the previous video, I mentioned that Russia is effectively outsourcing manufacturing of the tank shells to India. And I would not be surprised if there are many more things of that nature sort of being discussed, and eventually we may see sort of new, extra capability for Russia that's effectively provided by India. And obviously, it's very clear this development. The sort of related to this military capacity build up in Russia. So first, Russian president passed a decree allowing Russian engineers to use foreign IP. So what this really means is, in the past, all of the components for the military equipment had to be developed in Russia. So obviously, Russia is facing shortage of engineers, shortage of the programmers, all sort of shortages. And in order to address that, and it's obviously a desperation move, but it's a clever solution to the desperate situation. Russian president allowed use of foreign IP. So what this practically means is that Russian intelligence services are going to be stealing any military-related IP anywhere around the world, and then Russian engineers are going to be allowed to simply copy and paste and use that in Russian military equipment. And that's really, in a nutshell, it's obviously enhancing significantly Russia's military capabilities going forward. No question about that. Then there's another development in Russia in terms of building up its military capacity. Russian government is resurrecting, I don't know if it's right word, military academy or military higher education institution. I don't know what's the best way to call it. Specializing in artillery. It's going to be in Saratov. It existed in the past during Soviet time, obviously, but then it was shut down and sometimes in 2000s. Because Russia was focusing on different things. Let's put it this way at that time. Now focus changed, and there's Russia is building up its military capabilities, and obviously they are training new artillery commanders, which we all know that artillery is one of the most key components on the battlefield, and one of the key components to success. Not the only one. I just want to highlight that because it's an orchestra. It's never sort of single instrument. It's always orchestra that gives advantage. That is a source of success. And having said that, there was I got email from one of the viewers, from a viewer, asking about why I'm not commenting on the Hungarian president Viktor Orban, who went to Ukraine, then to Russia, then China. Now he's going to the U.S. and sort of jet setter basically. And the reason I didn't comment on that because it's much ado about nothing. This conflict is not about, Russian president didn't like something about Ukrainian president. He started the war. It's not a personal saying. It's really objective. It's like a tectonic plates are moving. It's really economies are moving. The world is readjusting to the new reality, and this particular war is just sort of one of the sort of symptoms of the bigger change that's happening in the world. And so thinking that because he goes and talks to 3 or 4 people that will stop the conflict is just I'll call it delusional, and probably extremely arrogant on his behalf, because it's not it's objective situation, where it's not that Russia's president, in some ways nobody has real control. They just, in some ways, tools or expression of the will of the economic situation, of economic developments, essentially. Both Ukrainian president and Russian president and the West and China, everybody is in the same boat. They not, because there is, I think, big misconception that it's like some kind of like a king, emperor, and whatever he says, things happen. It actually works opposite way. Simply, president senses what is happening, and then his or her job is to correctly express this sort of will of many economic actors. And if he or she does that, he stays in the power for a long time. If he or she does not, then you get kicked out, and new person comes and replaces you, and that's really how it works. So again, that reflects that Hungarian president doesn't really understand this fundamental nature of this whole situation. So and that's why I think there's no reason to expect that he's going to be successful. So he just traveling the world, he can do it 10 more times, 20 more times, and nothing's going to change or happen in the way that he sort of envisions that. I don't even mention that he's really effectively lobby for Russian president, which you need someone who is actually truly neutral, just for the starters. without even taking away what I just said about this objective situation. That's sort of where it's moving and where it's going, and all of these tectonic plates. You need to be neutral, and it's very clear that Hungarian president is totally not neutral person. He's, as I stated, lobbyist of Russia and actually China in Europe. So that's in a nutshell that situation. Now let's switch to the situation in Ukraine and on the battlefield. And I'm gonna do it in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do it. Starting from the north. So the situation along the state border remains more or less the same. There is no real sort of meaningful changes. There is always, exchange of all of this reconnaissance group that attack each other. Mostly it's Russian these days, not Ukrainian, but it's just basically PR. There is not much really. There is no real meaning that. Now let's move to the situation northeast of Kharkiv. Things basically stalled, and as I stated before, Ukrainian forces exhausted its potential. It's clearly need for replacements or reinforcements, to be more correct, to be able to finish the squeeze of Russian troops back across the border. As I mentioned many times before, this is the most inefficient and ineffective way of doing warfare, which is used by Ukrainian side, which implies primitive squeeze where it's consuming a lot of resources for very little gain. It's essentially the essence of it. Russian side is very similar, but I would say one step ahead relative to Ukraine. There are some improvements, but they are still sort of at the baby level type of situation. But and as I stated before, Russia is also severely lacking resources simply. But anyway, so the situation here just essentially stalemate for now. Doesn't mean it's forever, but for now that's where it stands. Now let's move to the situation north Luhansk section of the front line. So things here are more or less the same. Russian push towards Kupiansk from southeast. The same is happening actually from northeast. They slowly advancing. There are not huge advances, but bit by bit they moving sort of closer to their objective. Let's put this way. If there are any major developments, I'll update. But so far, it's impossible to show 300 meters forward. Similar things are happening in the southern sort of sector of this front line, where there is a push towards this, basically eliminate this bridgehead, Ukrainian bridgehead on the on the eastern side of this river, without terribly much success. The Russian troops more contained in this area than up north. Now let's look at the situation on the north Donbass front line. Things here are also very similar. Continuing Russian squeeze, again the same kind of primitive squeeze in this case. That's practiced by Ukrainian army. The same is practiced by Russian. Obviously, the objective is Siversk. So far, there's no really meaningful, significant advances beyond capturing this village Rozdolivka that I mentioned before. Essentially, Spirne and Vyimka essentially effectively lost by Ukrainian troops, but they are not like significant losses or just basically gaps in the defensive lines. It's just basically small retreats. but in essence, the situation is more or less contained here. Now let's look at the situation in south, west of Bakhmut. Basically, things are sort of going their course, where Russian troops basic effect. Well, sorry to use all these words, but they mopping up remaining resistance on the eastern side of this channel. Effectively, they control it. They need to eliminate this, at this point, Ukrainian bridgehead around Klishivka and Rivka, which they attacking actively, and then they need to capture this village Horivka. Then they will be ready to make a major move to capture Chasiv Yar. So as you can see, there's still quite a bit of work left for Russian side here, but it's very clear that things are moving very slowly but surely in Russian direction. It's just going to take quite a bit of time. And then let's look at the situation in the central Donbass front line. This is the most dangerous situation for Ukrainian forces, as I mentioned many times before. No major changes since last time here. The only maybe difference is that Russian troops are starting to attack this village Lazovatske, so they basically approaching it. They captured some fields here, and so they're moving closer towards this Lazovatske. Otherwise, there's continuing fighting where it's temporarily stable, but it's not strategically stable. It's just reprieve. Let's put this. That's probably the best word I can use in this situation. And I forgot to mention about the developments around this Donetsk. So Russian troops also mentioned before they made some advances when there was rotation of Ukrainian brigades, and basically new brigade apparently was less experienced, so commander was less experienced, and the rotation wasn't done right, and they used that moment to capture some territories. So far, they captured southern part of town called New York, which is hold on. Yeah, this one. So the attack was actually from the south. So there are some gains there by Russian troops, but so far they somewhat contained, and there is no meaningful advances there happening. This is going back to what I just discussed. This is the most dangerous situation. This I won't call it gap, but this area between Novoalexandrivka and I would say even all the way to Kharkivka is essentially the most potentially strategically dangerous development for Ukrainian troops and Ukrainian army general on the entire front line. Then south, Russian troops still going through Krasnohorivka, so some advances there, but again, small. It just sort of the process is going there. Russian troops are bogged down west of Marinka, no major advances there. No major advances west of Novomykhailivka, bogged down there as well for now. Again, this is all for now. Doesn't mean that they completely stalled. Now let's move to the situation on the Zaporizhzhia front line. Things here are also similar to the past, quiet. Major pressure south of this Velika Novosilka. Russian troops trying to regain lost ground from the last summer, but again, very primitive squeezes. Nothing major is happening so far. Some probing attacks around Robotine, even Gulay Pole, but again, very weak pressure is clearly sort of distraction than anything major going on here. Now let's move to the situation along the Dnipro River, and things here are quiet. Nothing really happening here for the reasons I explained before, which I will repeat. This is a sort of strategic dead end for both sides. Neither side has resources to exploit this area. So effectively, this leads to the stalemate here. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Till next time. Bye bye.